Welcome back to Square Off. What comes next for our rapidly shrinking water supply on the Colorado River? Water columnist Joanna Allhands of the Arizona Republic says we're at a crossroads. We still use much more water than the Colorado can reliably produce. And if we don't do a lot more to shrink this imbalance in 2023, she says, the lakes are done. With the feds failing to act, it's citizens and voters who need to help out. Joanna Allhands, welcome back to Square Off.
Thanks for having me.
Those were your words. They're kind of alarming words. We get worried about alarming people too often.
Yeah, and I hate to sound like a Debbie Downer. Like, I want to make sure that there's some good news out there about our water supply, but it is really dire where we are with the Colorado right now.
So let's back things up a bit to get folks up to date. Why has it been such a struggle in recent months to get states to agree on a longer-term plan to save the Colorado?
Well, it's a ton of water. It's a lot of water to find in a very, very short period of time. And it's not just, water that might be on paper that we can move around and make it look good. This is water we're using that we suddenly need to not use.
So when we talk about water to find, it's water we need to stop using. Mm-hmm. And it's in the millions of gallons.
Yeah, millions of acre feet, which is billions and billions of gallons.
Okay, billions, like Carl Sagan said. Billions. So just a couple of weeks ago, Arizona took a 21% cut in its water supply from the Colorado for next year. Sounds like a lot, is it?
It is, and it's not. In fact, we actually really got off light with the shortage level that was declared, because if we're going specifically on just where Lake Mead is, we should actually be in a deeper level of shortage, which would mean more cuts and cuts to California, which are currently not occurring.
Now, you told me you think there's an air of defeatism among the people who make these decisions, who manage the water. You're not the only person who's saying that. What do you mean by defeatism?
It's a really weird vibe that I get from people when I talk about just when they're in the conversations. Usually in deals before, there was sort of this like, we'll figure it out, we'll pull it together, we'll get something done. And I think just because it's such a ginormous amount of water that they have to find in such a small period of time, that people are just like, we can't do this. I mean, it literally requires dealing with every elephant in the room that we've had for decades that we've never been able to really figure out how to deal with. And they're saying, we're going to have to do that really quick. And that's just really hard.
And the really quick is by sometime next year or before?
We're basically going to have the plan, not necessarily have all of the water saved or stop using the water by the beginning of 2023, but we're going to have a plan in place pretty much by that time, because if this is such a large amount of water to save, it's going to take a while to do it.
So we need to remind folks, Arizona has more at stake here than the other states. We're kind of last in line, aren't we?
Yes.
How does that work?
So we were the last to join the compact, so we are thought to have the most junior rights. And so if this all plays out according to priorities, whoever has the senior rights versus junior rights, literally we could totally lose all of our water. We were on track in June to use about 2.1 million acre feet of water this year. That was our consumptive use that we're expected to have for this year. If we need to cut at least 2 million, that pretty much could totally zero us out if others don't get involved.
So our leaders haven't been able to pull this off. We don't know when or if they will.
No.
And we're talking about the western states plus Mexico. Let's set that aside. What can citizens, voters do now in the area of conservation or even asking the right questions in the middle of an election season?
Yeah, and I think there's probably three big things that we really just need to get our heads around. And the first one is we need to understand we've been kicking the can. Everything that we have done so far for the last several years, as painful as it's been, as impactful as it's been, especially here in Arizona, it hasn't done the trick. It's not enough. We have been kicking the can. We've just been putting Band-Aids on to buy time in ever shorter periods of time. We're really not getting anything out of it. And that's really why we're at this crossroads. If we don't do enough in 2023 then the amount of water that we're going to have to save to just provide this minimum protective level on the lakes increases by another several million acre feet over and above what we would have to do this year. If we can't come up with 2 million acre feet, we're definitely not coming up with 6.
So as a citizen, because I don't see cities reacting to this in a very strong way, is there something I should be doing as a homeowner?
Yeah. I mean, there are things, and we get that question a lot, is like, why should I conserve? Why should I do it if that guy over there isn't? And I think that's one of the big things that we really need to focus on, is that this is going to require sacrifice of all of us. Every one of us has a role to play. Every one of us is culpable because we all use the water and we're all using too much of it. So even if you are a city that uses a little water, you know, you could get rid of every blade of grass in your city and it's not going to change the trajectory of the Colorado. True, but the less that we use, the more resiliency we have, and it's just, everybody plays a role here. We all are going to have to sacrifice, because that's where we're at right now, is it really comes down to we're all going to have to sacrifice. This isn't going to be easy. It
sounds like you're really talking about a shift in the cultural mindset.
Yeah, we're going to need that.
Realizing we live in a desert.
Hey, it's weird. We live in a desert, and if you live here, there's sort of rules to that. If you want to live in a desert, you're going to have to use less water.
One good question to ask a politician who's running for office right now is what?
It would be, what are you gonna do? What are you prepared to step in and do? And so, you know, look, if Reclamation has basically come back and said, well, we were going to force the states to do things.
Those are the feds, the Bureau of Reclamation.
Right. If we said that was sort of their idea, is that we were gonna come back and force this, and then they said, well, nobody came to a deal, so let's just make this all voluntary. If voluntary doesn't work, if we can't get to yes, someone's gonna have to step in. And honestly, you know, it's probably not a bad idea to start writing your elected leaders, to write your congresspeople, to ask the candidates, what are you going to do? What are you prepared to do?
Who's going to step up?
Yeah.
All right. Joanna Allhands, thanks again so much for joining us.
Sure.